American here, and today I'm going to recommend you some Latino or Latina literature. Before we get into the recommendations, I just want to make one point very clear. For the purposes of this video, Latino and Latina literature is not the same thing as Latin American literature. There will not be any Gabriel Garcia Marquez in this video. He is a Latin American author. Latino and Latina are terms that are generally used to describe people of Hispanic descent who have immigrated to the United States or Canada, more commonly the United States, and who self-identify as Latino or Latina. So oftentimes it is a term used to describe Latin American immigrants to the United States. Again, not to be confused with Latin American authors who have resided most of their lives in Latin America. But again, these terms are all open to interpretation and have a lot to do with self-identification. So, if you're interested in learning more, we can talk in the comments a little bit about that. Latino and Latina literature is a subject that I'm pretty passionate about. I speak Spanish, I can read in Spanish, and so I really enjoy learning more about the culture of Latin American immigrants in the United States. And most of the books I'm going to talk about today, I think all but one, are very good portrayals of that immigrant experience. So if you like immigrant narratives, this is also a great video for you. So let's get started. The first book I have for you is Under the Feet of Jesus by Elena Maria Villamontes. This is a book that was published in 1995. It's a slim little volume. It is about 180 pages. Elena Maria Villamontes was actually born in the U.S., but she is of Mexican descent, and I believe either one or both of her parents were immigrants from Mexico. And it's the story of a family who work as migrant farm workers in the western and southern United States, and about their lives told particularly through the lens of one of the daughters in the family. This is a little bit of a tough book to read. And if you are not familiar with kind of the working conditions for migrant farm workers are people who travel all over the United States depending on what produce is in season and work at different farms at different times of the year. They kind of move where their jobs take them. And oftentimes their living conditions are very poor. A lot of times they're living in smaller buildings, shacks almost, with very few amenities. So sometimes they don't have running water or electricity, et cetera, and it's something that in the last few years there's been a lot of focus on the U.S. and a lot of reforms have gone through, but it's something that still needs attention. So this is a really beautiful narrative about that. I guess you could kind of classify it as YA. It's not difficult to read as far as style or pacing. It's actually a quick book. The themes behind it and the emotions behind it and just the raw human experience in this book is very, very touching and moving and inspiring. So I definitely recommend this. The next book I have is Dreaming in Cuban by Cristina Garcia. Cristina Garcia is a Cuban American. She was born in Cuba, and her family moved here in 1961 when she was about 2 years old. So they fled Cuba shortly after Fidel Castro came into power. And she has written 9 novels. This is the only one of hers I've read, but I've really enjoyed it, and I need to check out more of her work. Dreaming in Cuban is the story of 4 women and their experiences in Cuba and in the U.S., and it goes back and forth in perspectives, and some of it's epistolary, where they're writing letters to each other, and it's just a really beautiful little novel. It was published in 1992 and is about 240 pages long, so again, not too long of a read, a great place to get started. And again, it touches on women's struggles, it touches on the struggles of immigrants, it touches a lot on how first-generation born Americans have trouble connecting with their immigrant relatives, such as their parents and grandparents. And I just thought it was really beautiful and really touching and would be a great place to start if you're interested in reading some more Latina fiction. The next book I have for you is probably the most famous of all Latino authors in the U.S. right now, and that is Drowned by Junot Diaz. Junot Diaz is, of course, the author of 2 other works, The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, which won the Pulitzer Prize, and this is how you lose her. The reason that I picked Drown for this video is because I wanted books that really reflected the Latino or Latina experience and the immigrant experience. And I feel like Drown does that better than his other two works because the short stories in this collection kind of delve into the period leading up to and immediately following Junior's family's immigration to the U.S. So there are a lot of stories in this collection told from Junior's father's perspective when he's living in the U.S., but hasn't yet saved up enough money to bring over his wife and his children, which is a very common occurrence. And I just think that this collection is very gritty. It's a lot grittier than the other books I'm going to talk about today. It does not beat around the bush, and it does not shy away from some of the harsher realities of the Latino experience in the United States. So I would definitely recommend this. Again, not too long. You have no excuse. And please read it. The next book I have is this one. This is Y no se lo tragó la tierra, or And the Earth Did Not Devour Him by Tomas Rivera. And this was actually written in Spanish. It was published in 1987, and it was translated by Evangelina Vigil Piñón, also in 1987. So this version is side by side, or rather it's not side by side, but the first half is the Spanish version, the second half is the English. So you can see that the actual text is only about half of this book. Again, a very short, quick read. Tomas Rivera self-identified as Chicano, which again can be an offensive term if used inappropriately, so please be careful. Chicano generally refers to someone who was either born in Mexico and moved to the U.S. very early in their lives, or is of Mexican descent. So oftentimes there are people who are the first generations of their family to be born in the U.S. And Tomas Rivera grew up in Texas, and his family were migrant farm workers, and he worked on the farms himself as a young boy. So this is, again, like Under the Feet of Jesus, is a chronicle about the migrant farm worker experience. And this is told in a series of almost vignettes. Some of them are very short chapters. Some of them are a few more pages, but it's told from multiple perspectives within one family as they move around and what their experience is like moving from farm to farm and how their living conditions vary. And again, it just really encapsulates an experience that you don't get to hear about too often. Oftentimes, migrant farm workers are not very educated. They don't have the resources to tell their stories to a very large audience. So it's very important to read the little bit of fiction that's available on the subject. And again, it is a topic that has gotten a lot more recognition lately. The writing in this book is absolutely incredible. I really love it. And this was also turned into a movie, which I know nothing about because I haven't seen it. I don't watch a lot of movies, but maybe someday I'll see it and then I'll tell you what it's about. So again, if you're looking to read about the immigrant experience, the migrant farm worker experience, this is definitely for you. And lastly, I am the only book that is not set in the U.S. and is not necessarily about the immigrant experience, but I could not neglect this author or this book. That is Julia Alvarez, and this is In the Time of the Butterflies. This was published in 1994 and is about 330 pages long. And Julia Alvarez herself was born in the Dominican Republic and later immigrated to the United States. I've also read How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents by her, and that book is much more about the immigrant experience and the Latino experience. So if you are looking for more of that, definitely pick that up. But I couldn't help but sharing this book because I absolutely adore this book. This is historical fiction, which is not a genre that I'm usually crazy about. And it is set in the Dominican Republic during the reign of Trujillo. He was a dictator, and this is a story of 4 girls known as Las Mariposas, or the Butterflies, and how they kind of work to overthrow Trujillo's reign and how they end up dead, which is not a spoiler. You know that from the beginning. This is told in backwards chronological order through multiple perspectives of the four sisters, and it is really heart-shattering. It's a very interesting look into the political situation, the social situation in the Dominican Republic, even though it just scrapes the surface. It is historical fiction. It's based on a true story. It's not a true story. And I just think that it's very wonderful and deserves to get a lot more attention than it does. So yes, those are some recommendations I have for Latino or Latina fiction. Again, I'm always looking for new recommendations for books written by Latin American immigrants to the United States. Again, it's a topic that I'm very interested in exploring further. And if you have any recommendations, I'd love to hear it. If you have read any of these books or have any questions about these books and would like to talk about them in the comments, please feel free to do so, and I will see you later. Have a lovely day. Bye.